The National News Desk, locally covered, nationally connected.
It's not great, but it does feel like the Chinese want to negotiate.
A trade tit for tat begins to take shape. The latest response from China and what it might indicate about the possibility for an expanding trade war. Then a nationwide egg shortage is straining restaurants. The changes to menus and prices you could see starting this week. And the only name that might be bigger than Taylor Swift that will be at this year's Super Bowl, what it means for security and national history. This is the National News Desk, America's News Now. I'm Amira David. Tonight, China hitting back, the country announcing new tariffs on the United States in retaliation for President Trump's recently imposed 10% tariffs on Chinese goods. Today, China responding with 15% tariffs on coal, on liquefied natural gas, and another 10% on crude oil and agricultural machinery and large engine cars made in the United States. In 2018, President Trump increased Chinese tariffs multiple times to correspond to their rising tariffs at that time. Industries that could be further impacted by more tariffs on China include cell phones and computers, other electrical equipment, toys, gaming goods, and also sporting items. Clothing and textiles, as well as shoes, are also on the list. Economist Mark Zandi says the tariffs likely won't escalate because there's far too much at stake.
Our economy, the Chinese economy, the entire global economy will be in big trouble. Stock prices will be down. It'll be a mess. So hopefully Xi and President Trump can figure out a way forward without that happening.
And Zandi says China's response was relatively measured, given how much more they could have done in response. Trump is expected to speak to China's Xi Jinping today. All of this as President Trump has delayed tariffs on Mexico as well as Canada for a month. Part of the deal with Mexico comes with a pledge for more border security. But now new warnings from top border officials show concern about threats from Mexican cartel leaders. Here's national correspondent Christine Frizzell with more.
Mexico's pledge to send 10,000 troops to the border coming as those on this side of the border are facing new threats. The New York Post reporting on an internal memo warning Mexican cartel leaders have authorized the use of drones equipped with explosives to be used against U.S. Border Patrol agents and military personnel.
They're going to try to do what they can to make these situations where the Border Patrol gets in trouble, Border Patrol agents are hurt, they're responding to other situations so that they can then get their smuggled goods across the border.
Former ICE Director John Fabricatore says it's not about waging war, but a likely response to a loss in profits. With the rapid rise of migrants from all around the world wanting help getting to the U.S. border, it's estimated cartels made about $13 billion a year on human smuggling alone, using tunnels like this one recently discovered in El Paso.
That tunnel goes into Ciudad Juarez, comes from Ciudad Juarez into El Paso sector area.
This drone, recovered from a smuggler back in 2023, contained video appearing to show cartels surveilling the movements and activity of migrants as well as Border Patrol agents. But the warnings about drone attacks could bring more urgency for the U.S. military to assist in border security efforts.
The military has, ground penetrating radar. They've got other things that they've been using over in Afghanistan to discover tunnels in Afghanistan that could be used on the border. The military also has technology to be able to knock those drones out of the air if they do come into our territory and actually hunt drones.
Now, since Donald Trump took office just a little more than 2 weeks ago and declared an emergency at the southern border, the number of migrant encounters appears to have dropped dramatically, from between 1,200 and 1,400 a day during the final days of the Biden administration to between 600 and 700 a day more recently. Amira?
Yeah, that's quite a drop. But Christine, any idea where these warnings are coming from and how border officials are going to respond?
So this internal memo cites social media posts and other sources. Of course, they're always kind of on the lookout to try to monitor this activity. Those stationed at the border, though, are now being told to remain cognizant of their surroundings and also to carry proper equipment. That includes body armor. Military troops at the border may soon be asked to act in much more of a military capacity if this continues.
All right, Christine Frizzell live for us from Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for that report. And tonight, all 67 victims' remains have been recovered from the site of the Washington, D.C.'s mid-air collision. This after crews returned to the Potomac River today to search for 12 bodies that were still missing. Authorities right now in the process of returning those remains to their respective loved ones. Salvage crews today also removed more of the wreckage nearly a week after an American Airlines flight collided with a military helicopter. This as the cause of the collision remains under investigation. And less than a year after its collapse, the design concept for Baltimore's Francis Scott Key Bridge has been unveiled. And you're looking at it right now, a $2 billion project. Like the old bridge, it will have 4 lanes, but will be wider to accommodate larger shoulders. However, this bridge is expected to be significantly taller and stronger, according to Maryland Governor Wes Moore.
Our new bridge will also be constructed in accordance with the most advanced industrial standards and also the very best in infrastructure design. We are going to use the best materials available, and we are going to employ many Marylanders to get it done.
Some pre-construction work on the bridge is already underway, and the project is expected to be completed by October of 2028. The death toll in a shooting in Örebro, Sweden has risen to about 10. That's according to local officials, and it could rise. That number includes the gunman who opened fire inside an educational facility for adults with intellectual disabilities. It's also unknown at this time how many are injured. On-site investigators say the damage at the scene is extensive, making it hard to quickly give definitive answers. The Prime Minister has called it the worst shooting in the country's history. Police say the gunman acted alone and there is no known ties to terrorism, but a motive is unclear. Investigators say there were no warning signs. At least 7 families joined by a group of doctors who support LGBTQ rights have sued to halt President Donald Trump's executive order that blocks federal funding for hospitals that treat minors seeking gender-changing care. One of the mothers on that lawsuit, Kristen Chapman, says her family moved to Virginia from Tennessee to seek treatments for their child after a Tennessee law blocked their ongoing procedures. Virginia announced last week they will comply with the executive orders halting treatments for minors as well. The Supreme Court did hear arguments on the Tennessee law. A ruling in that case is expected over the summer. Meanwhile, in New York, Attorney General Letitia James is warning hospitals that ending care for minors seeking gender-changing treatments after Trump's executive order violates state laws. The job market appears to be cooling, but still healthy. New Labor Department numbers showing job openings fell from 8.2 million in November to 7.6 million in December, a bigger drop than economists had expected. That was also a decline from 8.9 million just a year prior. Job openings peaked in March of 2022 when the economy was rebounding from pandemic lockdowns. And a national egg shortage from bird flu is driving up costs for restaurants. The restaurant chain Biscuit Belly has switched to using cheaper eggs and even liquid eggs for some menu items. Waffle House is passing some of the costs on to customers. And starting this week, Waffle House is adding a temporary 50-cent surcharge per egg across all menus. Tonight, as a Gaza ceasefire holds into its 3rd week, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in the White House meeting with President Donald Trump right now. The two leaders discussing the current Mideast truce deal and how to create stability in a region that has been rocked by conflict for more than 75 years. Moments before that conversation, Trump signed a memo restoring a maximum pressure campaign on Iran, including sanctions to drive its oil exports down to zero in an effort to force the country to halt its nuclear development. As for next phases of the ceasefire deal, the current truce agreement calls for warring sides to create the terms of the second phase as the first phase is underway right now. But Special Mideast Envoy Steve Witkoff said today that he sees challenges ahead for a 3rd phase, which is meant to focus on the reconstruction of Gaza.
Phase 3, the reconstruction, is not going to go the way that agreement talks about, which is a 5-year program. It's physically impossible.
Witkoff says conditions on the ground in Gaza, which has been ravaged by the war, are not habitable, and the Trump administration has pressured Egypt and Jordan to take Palestinians, Gazans, into their countries as refugees. That proposal has been rejected by those countries as human rights groups express concerns over some Israeli proposals to encourage Palestinian migration without the option to return. Trump's Justice Department now facing a class action lawsuit over concerns of retribution from FBI employees. Today, several FBI workers sued to prevent the release of their information to the Trump administration. This after the law enforcement agency complied with a DOJ demand to turn over information about employees who worked on January 6th Capitol riot investigations. Job titles and employee ID numbers of more than 5,000 workers were submitted. Employees say they're worried the Trump administration will terminate them or even prosecute them if they're found to have been involved. They've called the survey a violation of the Constitution and privacy laws. President Trump says he told his Secretary of Education nominee, Linda McMahon, he wants her to do such a good job that she ends her own position inside the cabinet. This as Democrats worry Trump will follow through on threats to close the department altogether. National correspondent Matt Gelko reports on the next move that could alter the educational landscape in this country.
It's been a key campaign pledge from Donald Trump since 2023.
One other thing I'll be doing very early in the administration is closing up the Department of Education in Washington, D.C., and sending all education and education work and needs back to the states. We want them to run the education of our children because they'll do a much better job of it. You can't do worse.
The Wall Street Journal reports the president's administration is preparing to do just that, crafting an executive order to start dismantling the Department of Education. The department was created in 1979, but is now an apparent target of Elon Musk and his Department of Government Efficiency. More than 60 employees have already been put on paid administrative leave. Republicans have also long sought to end Washington's influence over education around the country, usually targeting alleged indoctrination through topics like gender and race.
It puts Washington in charge of what's taught to our kids. I think education ought to be a state matter, and even better, a local matter.
The order reportedly will target parts of the department that aren't protected by federal law. It is in charge of billions of dollars of funding that goes towards things like low-income education, serving students with disabilities, and enforcing civil rights law. Congress would need to pass a bill in order to fully abolish it, and one has already been filed. Teachers' unions are already pushing back.
The move is not legal in that even they recognize that there are lots of things about the Department of Education that are in statute. Let me just talk about the most important things. The money that goes out for kids with disabilities, the money that goes out for kids who are low income.
President Trump already signed other orders related to education, targeting diversity programs, expanding school choice, and combating anti-Semitism. Meanwhile, his pick to lead the department, Linda McMahon, has yet to have her confirmation hearing scheduled. Reporting in Washington, I'm Matt Gelka for the National News Desk, America's News Now.
Matt, thank you. And coming up, the heavy rain, ice, and snow that's putting millions of people under alerts from coast to coast this week. Then the latest on President Trump's cabinet, the leaders who just got confirmed to serve. And later, the backlash from protesters across the country against President Trump's migrant deportation policies. We'll be right back. 60 million Americans are under winter weather advisories as two major storms head to the northern U.S. right now. The first one forecast to bring freezing rain to the Midwest tomorrow, reaching the Ohio Valley, the Great Lakes, and the Mid-Atlantic by tomorrow night. Then on Thursday, it's going to move right to the Northeast, turning into snow when it hits New England. The second storm will affect a similar area on Saturday and Sunday. This has over 20 million people in California are right now under flood alerts as an atmospheric river slams the west coast. Flooding has already closed roads, damaged homes, and shut off power in parts of Northern California. Several people have been rescued from floodwaters.
It's been crazy because I got this morning to go to work and I walked out and about 2 feet of water out of my garage. I hope it gets it done before the next rain, because the next rain comes, I have no room to give. I have no options now.
A few more inches of rain are possible in the north and south by the end of the week. Heavy rain could cause mudslides in places burned by recent wildfires. California officials are calling for quick reforms after evacuation alerts were accidentally sent to hundreds of thousands of people in Los Angeles County during the deadly wildfires. The alerts came from the company Genesis Incorporated, FEMA, and the FCC. Lawmakers sent letters to the county and everyone involved asking for a response by April 1st. State Farm Insurance is asking the state of California for an emergency interim rate change that would amount to an average increase of 22% for California residents. State Farm argues the cost of the fires will deplete capital that's necessary to pay for future claims. California officials say the rate filings are raising concerns about the company's finances. Tonight, the Senate is set to vote to confirm Pam Bondi as the new Attorney General in the United States. She is expected to be confirmed after passing through a procedural vote last night, 52-46, along party lines. Earlier today, in a bipartisan vote, former Congressman Doug Collins was confirmed with 77 votes to become the new Secretary of Veteran Affairs. And two more of Trump's cabinet nominees are moving forward to final votes. Controversial picks Tulsi Gabbard for Director of National Intelligence and also Robert F. Kennedy for Secretary of Health and Human Services. They were both voted out of committee along party lines. Despite questionable support for RFK, it did pass this morning, but Senator Bill Cassidy, a former critic, said he heard enough to move Kennedy along.
We need a leader at HHS who will guide President Trump's agenda to make America healthy again. Based on Mr. Kennedy's assurances on vaccines and his platform to positively influence Americans' health, it is my consideration.
All right, well, here's a live look over New Orleans and the Superdome, where in just 5 days, the city will host Super Bowl 59 between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs. President Donald Trump, he has announced just today that he will be at that game, becoming the first sitting president to watch the Super Bowl in person. And as we look forward to the big game, it's no surprise that the Super Bowl is the biggest sports betting day of the year. Medical reporter Liz Bonas, she shares what gambling addiction specialists say as they urge caution when putting your money on the line.
A quick online search will show you can bet on not just the game, but novelty things, from the color of the Gatorade bath to heads or tails in the coin toss. It's one of the reasons, not to mention, Michael Stone, the executive director of the Kentucky Council on Problem Gambling, told me betting is risky business.
I had a manic gambling episode when I was 20 years old. I walked out of a horse track with like 20 cents in my pocket.
Based on recent year-to-year numbers on just the state hotline he tracks, he's not the only one.
The calls that we are providing reportable service to have increased 65%.
That does not surprise addiction specialist Dr. Chris Toole of Ohio's Lunar Center of Hope. He says when you compare suicide rates from the Ohio area he tracks of about 15 in every 100,000 to areas where gambling is big business,
but it's about 34 to 35 per 100,000 in Las Vegas. So more than double that amount that we're seeing, and really how problematic it is for someone to lose their, savings, lose their retirement, lose their kids' college fund.
What's more is on the day of the big game.
And it becomes, for some gamblers, their last chance to get right. And if they are not, then they're in very difficult circumstances.
To avoid that, it's suggested you set a time limit for betting on game day, set a budget, and if you can't stick to it, know that help is available. Now, the National Problem Gambling Helpline is 1-800-GAMBLER. It covers all 50 states if you do need help. The National Council on Problem Gambling operates that hotline, and they have online information as well as referral help. With your health news, I'm Liz Bonus reporting.
All right, Liz, thank you. And coming up, the change to women's sports policies that former swimmer Riley Gaines is calling for. We'll be right back. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering the issues that matter most to you. We're taking the pulse of America, and we start in California with a protest supporting undocumented immigrants.
We need to support our own, right?
Hundreds of people are standing in solidarity with immigrants on this nationwide Day Without Immigrants movement Monday.
They're trying to kick us out and break us up? I don't think so.
Large protests were held both in Los Baños and Sanger to make a very loud statement following increased immigrations and customs enforcement activity around the country.
We want our voices to be heard. It's going to get all the way to the White House, to Donald Trump, our president.
The message: Colin wants the Trump administration to stop separating families and deporting people who he says make the American economy great.
I came out here because we're looking for our rights. We're looking for amnesty. A lot of these field workers, a lot of our families that are immigrants, there could be a reform so we can get a permit.
It's been a few weeks since Tennessee lawmakers demanded change from the NCAA on what they call protecting women in sports, and still nothing from the organization. Sumner County native Riley Gaines is hoping the new Trump administration will step in. This after President Trump signed executive orders recognizing only biological women and men.
I think it's huge. We've seen a systemic erasure of women as a whole.
Gaines previously competed against Leah Thomas, a transgender athlete, before she spoke up.
With the stance I've taken comes a lot of backlash.
Last year, Gaines was among the plaintiffs who filed a lawsuit claiming the NCAA violated Title IX and asked the NCAA to reverse their policies. Title IX is based on ensuring there is no discrimination based on sex.
A dry day on Mount Hood.
But that's not stopping the fun for skiers and snowboarders taking advantage of the fresh powder that fell over the weekend. I spoke with one woman from Salem who extended her ski trip because of the perfect conditions.
I think we decided that Friday, when we saw the forecast that there is going to be a lot of snow this weekend. We haven't had any snow in the last month, and when it snows, there's fresh powder on the mountain, and powder are great to ski in.
For some, this is their first visit of 2025.
I haven't been out for too many Bluebird days just because we haven't gotten a lot of fresh. But this is my first day up since probably New Year's, and it's so nice.
Well, coming up, why scientists are so happy to learn about 2 huge canyons on the moon. We'll tell you about it on the other side. Did you know there are 2 canyons on the moon as big as the Grand Canyon, and they were formed billions of years ago by an asteroid? New research in the journal Nature Communications reveals that the chasms were created in just minutes, approximately 10 minutes on the far side, without affecting the Earth-facing side. And that's really great news for NASA astronauts who plan to study older rocks on the near side to try and understand the origins of both the moon and the Earth. And now you know the tale of the 2 canyons. That does it for this edition of the National News Desk. I'm Amira David. Thank you so much for watching.